She overheard her groom's secret confession the night before their wedding. Tyler Grant's voice carried across the Napa Valley terrace, clear in the evening stillness. Olivia Carter stood frozen behind the garden trellis, a box of candles in her hands, listening to the man she was supposed to marry in less than 12 hours. "Once we're married, the bank approves the loan with her credit," Tyler said, his tone casual, almost amused. "Her savings cover the liquidity requirement. 2, maybe 3 years, project stabilizes, then we separate cleanly." His best man laughed. "That's cold, man. Cheaper than giving equity to investors. Besides, she'll never know. She's too emotional about the wedding to read the fine print." Olivia's grip tightened on the box. 6 months of designing every detail of this ceremony. Her personal savings poured into making it perfect, believing she was marrying a partner, not becoming collateral. She should have confronted him, should have screamed, thrown the candles, ended it in that garden. Instead, she quietly took out her phone and pressed record. Before we continue, if you want to uncover what happens next in this shocking tale and never miss another jaw-dropping twist, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell right now. This support helps this channel bring you even more stories like this. Now let's jump deep into the story. 2 years earlier, Olivia Carter had built something from nothing. Her parents were middle-class professionals in Sacramento who'd taught her that respect was earned, not inherited. She'd launched her event design company in Seattle at 28 with a single corporate client and a rented workspace. Within 3 years, she was designing product launches for tech companies, charity galas for philanthropists, and intimate celebrations for people who valued artistry over excess. Her work spoke for itself. Clean lines, emotional resonance, flawless execution. She met Tyler Grant at a corporate launch event she'd designed for a Portland-based tech startup. He'd approached her afterward, impressed by the transformation she'd created. "You don't just design events," he'd said. "You create experiences." It was the right thing to say. Tyler was charming in the way successful men often are, confident without arrogance, ambitious without desperation. He ran a real estate development company focused on luxury residential projects in the Pacific Northwest. He talked about vision, legacy, building things that mattered. They dated for 2 years. When he proposed on a private beach in Cannon Beach, Oregon, with the ocean crashing behind them, Olivia believed she'd found someone who saw the world the way she did. She was wrong. The wedding was supposed to be the pinnacle of everything she'd worked for. She'd chosen Napa Valley because Tyler had always talked about opening a development project there, luxury homes overlooking the vineyards. It felt symbolic, a wedding in the place where their future would unfold. She designed every detail herself. Ivory roses cascading from hand-built arbors, golden lighting that would shift as the sun set over the valley, a string quartet she'd personally auditioned, custom menus printed on handmade paper. She invested her personal savings into upgrades Tyler suggested: better wine, expanded guest list, premium accommodations for his business contacts. He'd explained that several potential investors would be attending. "This wedding isn't just about us," he'd said. "It's about showing people we're building something together." She'd love that. The idea of partnership, of being a team. She worked 16-hour days in the weeks leading up to the ceremony, balancing client projects with wedding preparation. Her assistant begged her to delegate, to rest, to let someone else handle the final details. But Olivia couldn't. This was her wedding, her future. She wanted it perfect. The night before the ceremony, she returned to the vineyard venue at 11 p.m. The rehearsal dinner had ended hours ago. Tyler had gone to his suite with his groomsmen for cigars and whiskey. Olivia had stayed behind to adjust the lighting installation. One of the uplights wasn't hitting the arbor correctly. She was carrying the box of replacement candles across the garden when she heard voices from the terrace. Tyler's voice, and his best man, Marcus. She should have called out, should have let them know she was there. But something in Tyler's tone stopped her. Calculation. "I'm telling you, man, this wedding solves everything," Tyler said. "The bank rejected my loan application twice because my credit's maxed and I don't have enough liquid assets. But once we're married, they can approve it with Olivia's credit score. It's spotless. 850. Olivia's breath caught. "And she's just okay with that?" Marcus asked. "She doesn't know. She thinks we're getting a joint account for household expenses. She has no idea I'm using it to secure the development loan. What if she finds out?" "She won't. And even if she does, By the time the project stabilizes in 2 or 3 years, we can separate cleanly. Divorce is cheaper than giving equity to investors. Marcus laughed. Uncomfortable, but he laughed. You're cold, man. I'm strategic. Olivia's great. She's talented, stable, responsible. But this project is my future. I'm not letting it die because some bank thinks I'm overextended. Silence. Olivia stood behind the trellis, the box of candles heavy in her hands, her entire body frozen. The wedding wasn't about love. It wasn't about partnership. It was leverage. She was leverage. She didn't cry. Not there in the garden, listening to the man she was supposed to marry laugh about using her credit score. Not when Marcus asked if she'd really never notice. Not when Tyler said, she's too emotional about the wedding to read the fine print. Something colder was happening. Something sharper. She took out her phone, opened the voice recorder, and pressed the red button. Tyler kept talking. About the loan structure. About how the prenup his attorney drafted would protect his business assets while allowing joint financial applications after marriage. About how he'd timed everything perfectly. Her savings will cover the liquidity requirement the bank wants to see. Temporary bridge funding. I'll pay it back once the first phase sells. And if it doesn't sell, it will. And if it doesn't, that's what the prenup is for. Clean exit. No liability on my end. Olivia recorded for 3 minutes. Then she quietly backed away, returned to her suite, and locked the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her wedding dress hanging on the closet door. Tomorrow, she was supposed to walk down an aisle she'd designed herself, toward a man who'd turned their marriage into a financial transaction. Tomorrow, Tyler Grant believed he would win. But Olivia Carter had spent 2 years building a business on one principle: details matter. And she knew exactly which details would destroy him. Olivia didn't sleep. She sat in her suite with her laptop open, the recording playing on repeat through her headphones. Tyler's voice, casual and confident, explaining how he'd manipulated their entire relationship into a financial strategy. She's too emotional about the wedding to read the fine print. The words cut deeper each time, not because they were cruel, though they were, but because they were wrong. Olivia had built her entire career on reading the fine print, on anticipating problems before they happened, on designing contingencies into every plan. Tyler had mistaken her emotional investment for naivety. He was about to learn the difference. At 1 a.m., she opened the folder containing their prenuptial agreement. Tyler had insisted on it 6 weeks ago, framed as mutual protection. His attorney had drafted it, a clean, professional document that outlined asset separation, business protections, and financial responsibilities. Olivia had read it carefully at the time. It seemed fair. His company assets stayed his. Her business stayed hers. Joint expenses would be handled through a shared account. But now, reading it again with Tyler's recorded confession fresh in her mind, she saw what she'd missed. Clause 7, subsection C. Both parties agree to act in good faith regarding joint financial applications and shared credit obligations undertaken during the marriage. It sounded reasonable, until you understood what it actually meant. Tyler could apply for loans using her credit, could list her income and assets as household resources, could leverage her financial stability without her explicit consent, as long as it happened after the marriage. The prenup offered him protection. It offered her nothing. If the loan defaulted, she'd be liable. If the project failed, her credit would collapse with it. If he divorced her in 3 years like he'd planned, she'd walk away with debt she never agreed to. The document wasn't mutual protection. It was a trap. At 2 a.m., she called Jennifer Zhao. Jennifer was a corporate attorney she'd worked with on a luxury charity gala in San Francisco. Sharp, efficient, and available at unreasonable hours for clients she liked. Olivia. Jennifer's voice was alert despite the time. Everything okay? No. I need emergency legal consultation. Tonight. 30 minutes later, they were on a video call. Olivia played the recording. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression darkening with each passing second. When it ended, she leaned back in her chair. You're getting married in 10 hours. I know. And he signed the prenup already? No. Notarization is scheduled for tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. 2 hours before the ceremony. Jennifer's eyes sharpened. Then we have a window. They worked through the night. Jennifer drafted a revised prenuptial agreement that looked identical to Tyler's version. Same formatting, same structure, same language in most sections. But three critical clauses were different. Clause 4, subsection B. Both parties agree to full financial disclosure prior to any joint credit applications, loans, or debt obligations. Failure to disclose intent constitutes breach of agreement. Clause 9, subsection A. Any financial misrepresentation, fraud, or use of marital status for undisclosed business purposes voids this agreement and subjects the offending party to personal liability. Clause 12. This agreement may be dissolved immediately if either party demonstrates evidence of premarital fraud or financial deception. The changes were surgical, buried in legal language, invisible unless you were looking for them. If he signs this, Jennifer said, and you can prove he planned to use your credit fraudulently, you're protected. Completely. And he's exposed. Legally, financially, and reputationally. Yes. Olivia stared at the document on her screen. This wasn't revenge. It was insurance. Send it. At 6 a.m., Olivia showered, dressed, and applied makeup with hands that didn't shake. She looked at herself in the mirror. The bride who'd spent 6 months planning this day. The woman who'd believed in partnership and trust and futures built together. That woman was gone. In her place was someone Tyler had created without meaning to. Someone who understood exactly how much damage truth could do. At 8 a.m., Tyler arrived at her suite for the prenup signing. He was relaxed, confident, dressed in a crisp white shirt with his tuxedo jacket draped over his arm. He kissed her cheek, smiling like a man who'd already won. Morning, beautiful. Ready to make this official. Always. The notary, a professional Jennifer had arranged, sat at the desk with the revised document already prepared. Tyler barely glanced at it. He flipped to the signature pages, skimmed the final paragraph, and signed his name with a flourish. There. Now we're really doing this. Olivia signed her name slowly, deliberately. The notary stamped the document. It was done. Tyler had just signed legal protection for her and evidence against himself. And he had no idea. At breakfast, Tyler wrapped his arm around her waist. After today, everything changes for us. Olivia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Yes, it will. He kissed her forehead and left to get ready with his groomsmen. Olivia sat alone in the suite, the signed prenup in her hands. Outside, the vineyard was already filling with guests. The string quartet was warming up. The florists were making final adjustments to the arbor. Everything looked perfect, and in 3 hours, Tyler Grant would realize that perfection was the last thing he should have expected. By 11 a.m., Napa Valley looked like something from a wedding magazine. The vineyard stretched endlessly under California's sun, rows of vines creating geometric patterns across rolling hills. White chairs lined the ceremony lawn in perfect rows, facing an arbor covered in ivory roses and cascading greenery. Golden uplighting stood ready to illuminate everything once the sun began its descent. 200 guests filled the seats. Tyler's potential investors sat strategically in the 3rd and 5th rows, exactly where he'd requested. Men in expensive suits who'd flown in from Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles to witness what they thought was a wedding. What they didn't know was that they were about to witness something else entirely. In the bridal suite, Olivia's stylist made final adjustments to her veil. You look absolutely stunning. Olivia stared at her reflection. The dress was custom, fitted lace bodice, flowing silk skirt, hand-beaded details that caught the light. Her hair was swept into an elegant updo. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like a bride. She felt like someone playing a role in a play she'd rewritten overnight. Her phone buzzed. A text from her coordinator. Ceremony starts in 10 minutes. String quartet ready. Groom is at the altar. Olivia picked up her bouquet. White roses, eucalyptus, touches of gold. She designed it herself 3 months ago, back when she believed flowers symbolized new beginnings. Now they just felt like props. At the altar, Tyler stood with his best man, Marcus. He looked confident, relaxed, a man who'd planned everything perfectly and was watching it all come together. His mother sat in the front row, already crying. His father checked his watch, nodding approvingly at the punctuality. The investors in row 3 were engaged in quiet conversation, probably about the development project Tyler had been pitching for months. The project that would finally be possible after today. Tyler adjusted his boutonniere and smiled. In his mind, he was already calculating timelines. Marriage license filed next week. Joint account opened. Loan application submitted with Olivia's credit score attached. Approval in 30 days. Everything was falling into place. The processional music began. Pachelbel's Canon in D, played by the string quartet Olivia had personally auditioned. The sound drifted across the vineyard, elegant and timeless. Guests stood. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in champagne-colored dresses, each carrying smaller versions of Olivia's bouquet. Then the music shifted. The bride's processional. Olivia appeared at the end of the aisle, her father beside her, veil flowing behind her. Guests smiled. Some cried. Tyler's expression softened as he watched her approach. For a moment, just a moment, Olivia wondered if any part of him had ever loved her. If there had been real moments buried beneath the strategy and calculation. Then she remembered his voice on the recording. Cheaper than giving equity to investors. The wondering stopped. She reached the altar. Her father kissed her cheek, placed her hand in Tyler's, and stepped aside. Tyler squeezed her hand gently. "You're beautiful," he whispered. Olivia said nothing. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The ceremony progressed exactly as planned. Traditional words about love and commitment and futures built together. Tyler looked at Olivia like a man who couldn't believe his luck. And then, just before the vows, Olivia raised her hand. "I'm sorry. May I have just one moment?" The officiant paused, confused. "Of course." Olivia turned to the guests. "Before we exchange vows, I'd like to share something with everyone here. I created a special presentation about Tyler's and my journey together." She nodded to her coordinator. The woman looked uncertain, but signaled to the AV team positioned near the back of the ceremony space. A large screen behind the altar illuminated. Tyler smiled, assuming this was part of Olivia's romantic planning. One of her signature touches. The screen showed photos. Their first date at a Seattle restaurant. The weekend they'd spent hiking in the Columbia River Gorge. Tyler's proposal on the beach. Guests murmured appreciatively. Olivia's mother wiped tears from her eyes. Then the photos faded. An audio began to play. Tyler's voice filled the vineyard. Clear. Unmistakable. Casual. "Once we're married, the bank approves the loan with her credit. Her savings cover the liquidity requirement." The guests went silent. Tyler's smile vanished. 2, maybe 3 years, project stabilizes, then we separate cleanly. Someone in the third row, one of the investors, straightened in his seat. Marcus's face drained of color. "Cheaper than giving equity to investors." Laughter on the recording. "She's too emotional about the wedding to read the fine print." The vineyard was completely silent now, except for Tyler's recorded voice explaining exactly how he'd planned to use his bride's credit, savings, and trust to fund a real estate project she knew nothing about. 200 people sat frozen, phones slowly emerging from pockets and purses. When the audio ended, the silence was absolute. Olivia turned to Tyler. His face was white. His hands shook. "I believe," Olivia said, her voice steady and clear, "that honesty should come before vows." She reached into her bouquet and pulled out a folded document, the prenuptial agreement he'd signed that morning without reading. She handed it to him. "You should review what you signed, especially Clause 9, the fraud liability section." Tyler's hands trembled as he unfolded the document. His eyes scanned the page, then stopped. "Any financial misrepresentation, fraud, or use of marital status for undisclosed business purposes voids this agreement and subjects the offending party to personal liability." His face went from white to gray. "Olivia." She removed her engagement ring and placed it carefully on the altar. "The wedding is canceled." The guests erupted into whispers. In the third row, one of Tyler's investors stood up and walked toward the exit, phone already pressed to his ear. In the fifth row, another leaned over to his companion, speaking urgently. Tyler's mother gasped. Marcus stepped back, putting physical distance between himself and the groom. The officiant looked between Tyler and Olivia, completely lost. And Olivia Carter turned and walked back down the aisle. Alone, composed, untouchable. Her veil trailed behind her like a banner of victory. Behind her, Tyler Grant stood at the altar, surrounded not by celebration, but by 200 witnesses to his calculated betrayal, and by investors who were already recalculating everything they thought they knew about his character. The vineyard lawn became chaos within minutes. Guests stood in clusters, phones out, voices rising in urgent conversation. Some looked shocked, others angry. A few were already texting people who weren't there, spreading the news like wildfire. Tyler stood frozen at the altar, the prenup still in his hands, his face a mask of disbelief. "Olivia, wait," he called out. But she was already gone, disappearing into the bridal suite with her coordinator close behind. Marcus grabbed Tyler's arm. "We need to go? Now." But Tyler couldn't move, couldn't process what had just happened, couldn't understand how the woman he'd thought was too emotional to notice his plan had just dismantled his entire future in front of everyone who mattered. In the third row, David Chin stood and buttoned his suit jacket. He was the primary investor Tyler had been courting for 6 months, a venture capitalist from San Francisco with deep pockets and deeper standards. He'd flown to Napa specifically because Tyler had positioned this wedding as proof of stability, maturity, and partnership. Instead, he'd just heard a recording of the groom laughing about using his bride as collateral. David walked toward the exit, dialing his office as he moved. "Pull the term sheet. Tyler Grant Project. Pull it immediately and don't return his calls." Behind him, another investor, Rebecca Torres from a Portland development fund, was having a similar conversation. Fraudulent misrepresentation. On recording. In front of 200 people. "No, I don't care about the opportunity. Character matters more than ROI." By the time the ceremony space had emptied, Tyler had lost 3 potential investors without saying a single word. Tyler's parents found him still standing at the altar. "What the hell was that?" his father demanded, his face red with anger and humiliation. "What did you do?" "I didn't." "It's not." Tyler started, but he had no explanation that would make this better. His mother looked at him with something worse than anger. Disappointment. "You were using her? For money." "It wasn't like that." "We heard the recording, Tyler," his father said. "Everyone heard it. You planned to marry that woman to access her credit and then divorce her when your project stabilized. It's a business strategy. People do it all the time." His father's expression hardened. "No, con artists do it. And you just confessed to it in front of our entire family and half the business community in the Pacific Northwest." His mother touched his arm once, gently, then turned and walked away. His father followed without another word. Tyler stood alone at the altar, surrounded by ivory roses and golden light and the ruins of everything he'd built. In the bridal suite, Olivia changed out of her wedding dress. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no grief. Just clarity. Her coordinator hovered nearby, uncertain what to say. "The vendors are asking what to do about the reception. The catering, the music, cancel everything. Send the guests home. Donate the food to a local shelter. Pay the vendors for their time. And the gifts. Return them with notes explaining the wedding was canceled. Keep it simple." The coordinator nodded and left to handle the logistics. Olivia sat on the edge of the couch in jeans and a simple blouse, her wedding dress hanging abandoned on the closet door. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Zhao. "Recording is legal evidence in CA. Prenup is enforceable. You're protected. Well done." Another text, this one from her best friend in Seattle. "What happened? Are you okay?" Olivia didn't respond to either. Instead, she opened her email and began drafting a message to her business clients, letting them know she'd be unavailable for the next week while she handled personal matters. Professional. Brief. No details. Because this wasn't about revenge or humiliation or public spectacle. It was about protection. And Tyler Grant was about to learn exactly how much it would cost him. By evening, the story was everywhere. Not in tabloids or gossip sites. Olivia hadn't involved the media, and neither had the guests, most of whom were professional enough to understand discretion. But in the networks that mattered. Real estate development circles in Portland and Seattle. Investment communities in San Francisco. Event planning professionals who'd heard whispers about what happened at a Napa Valley wedding. The story spread quietly but thoroughly. Tyler Grant had been caught on recording admitting he planned to use his bride's credit fraudulently, then got exposed at the altar in front of his investors. Character mattered in business, and Tyler's character had just been broadcast to everyone who could affect his future. 3 days later, Tyler received the first email. From his business partner, Eric, who'd been running operations while Tyler focused on securing funding. "Tyler, I need to be direct. After what happened at the wedding, I can't continue our partnership. The investors we were courting have all withdrawn, and our reputation in the industry is severely damaged. I'm buying out your share per the terms of our LLC agreement. My attorney will be in touch. I'm sorry it ended this way. Eric. Tyler read it 3 times, his chest tight. Then came the second email. From the bank where he'd been pursuing the development loan. Mr. Grant, we regret to inform you that your loan application has been suspended pending review. Recent information has come to our attention regarding potential misrepresentation on your application materials. We will contact you if we require additional documentation. Then the third, from the Napa Valley property owner he'd been negotiating with for the luxury housing development. Tyler, given recent circumstances, we've decided to explore other development partnerships. We wish you well in your future endeavors. By the end of the week, Tyler's entire professional foundation had collapsed. No investors, no bank approval, no business partner, no project. He sat in his Portland apartment, staring at his computer screen, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The answer was simple. Olivia hadn't just canceled the wedding. She'd canceled his future, and she'd done it without raising her voice once. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Tyler Grant filed for bankruptcy. His development company, the one he'd built over 5 years, couldn't survive without the Napa Valley project. The loans he'd taken to prepare for it, the investors he'd promised returns, the overhead he'd maintained in anticipation of funding. All of it collapsed when the wedding did. The bankruptcy filing was quiet, handled through attorneys, processed without fanfare. But in professional circles, people noticed. The real estate developer who'd tried to marry his way into a loan was now officially insolvent. Some people felt sympathy. Most didn't. Olivia Carter's business, meanwhile, was experiencing the opposite trajectory. 2 weeks after the canceled wedding, a feature appeared in Pacific Northwest Weddings, not about the ceremony itself, but about Olivia's professionalism and composure under impossible circumstances. The article didn't mention Tyler by name. It didn't need to. Instead, it focused on what happened after, how Olivia had handled vendor payments personally, ensured guests were taken care of, and donated thousands of dollars of prepared food to local charities rather than let it go to waste. Even in crisis, Olivia Carter demonstrated the kind of grace and strategic thinking that defines excellent event design. The story resonated. Within days, Olivia received inquiries from clients she'd never approached, corporate executives who valued discretion, philanthropists planning high-profile galas, couples who wanted someone who could handle pressure with elegance. Her calendar filled. Her rates increased. By month 3, she'd opened a satellite office in San Francisco. By month 5, she was designing a product launch in Los Angeles for a tech company that had specifically requested her because of how she handled that situation in Napa. Olivia didn't talk about the wedding publicly, didn't leverage it for publicity, didn't tell her side of the story to anyone who asked. She simply worked, and her work spoke louder than any explanation could. One evening in early autumn, Olivia stood in a Seattle event space she was designing for a corporate gala. The venue was a converted warehouse in Pioneer Square, industrial bones with soaring ceilings, exposed brick, massive windows overlooking Elliott Bay. She was transforming it into something elegant and modern, balancing the raw architecture with strategic lighting and minimal florals. Her assistant was reviewing the installation schedule when the venue coordinator approached. "Ms. Carter, there's a small real estate networking event happening in the adjacent space tonight. Just wanted to give you a heads up in case you hear noise." Olivia nodded. "Not a problem. We're just doing measurements tonight." She was adjusting the angle of an uplighting mock-up when she heard voices from the hallway. One of them stopped her. Tyler's voice. She hadn't heard it in 6 months, not since the recording she'd played at the altar. He was talking to someone about commercial properties, his tone careful and measured, professional, diminished. Olivia didn't freeze, didn't react, didn't feel the sharp edge of anger or grief or vindication. She just felt nothing. Tyler appeared in the hallway, networking folder in hand, wearing a suit that looked slightly too worn. He was thinner, older looking. The confidence that had defined him was gone, replaced by something careful and tentative. He saw her, froze. Olivia met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned back to her lighting diagram and continued working. No acknowledgement, no anger, no need. Tyler stood in the hallway for a long moment, then quietly walked away. That night, Olivia returned to her Seattle apartment overlooking Lake Union. Her business manager had sent the quarterly financials. Revenue was up 40%. Client retention was at 95%. The Los Angeles office was already profitable. Her assistant had forwarded 3 new project inquiries, all high-profile, all specifically requesting Olivia by name. She poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the water. 6 months ago, she'd been standing in a vineyard in Napa Valley, listening to the man she was about to marry explain how he planned to use her. She'd had 2 choices in that moment. She could have confronted him, could have screamed and cried and let emotion drive her response, could have walked away quietly and carried the betrayal like a wound. Or she could have done what she'd built her entire career on. Pay attention to details. Anticipate problems. Design contingencies. Execute with precision. She'd chosen the latter. And while Tyler had been planning how to leverage her trust, she'd been protecting the future he would never be part of. Final reflection. Olivia didn't destroy Tyler with revenge. She destroyed the illusion he'd built his future on. The illusion that trust was something you could manipulate without consequence. That emotional investment meant weakness. That people who cared deeply were easier to deceive. He'd underestimated her, not because she lacked intelligence, but because he'd mistaken her emotional honesty for naivety. And that mistake cost him everything. Not because Olivia was cruel, but because she was strategic. Not because she wanted him to suffer, but because she refused to be used. The wedding gift she gave him at the altar wasn't humiliation. It was truth. And truth, delivered at the right moment, with the right evidence, to the right audience. Truth was the most devastating weapon of all. 6 months later, Tyler was rebuilding from nothing. And Olivia was building something better than she'd ever imagined. Not because she'd won, but because she'd refused to lose. In this story, you learn the devastating cost of using someone's trust as leverage, the consequences of underestimating quiet intelligence, and how strategic patience triumphs over calculated cruelty. If this story resonated with you, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. We share stories about dignity, justice, and the power of staying calm when others underestimate you.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Subscribe, like, and click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.